1,000 Old Sisters star Amy Slaton's child is seriously ill. The child of popular reality show 1,000 Old Sisters star Amy Slaton is suffering from a serious illness caused by cancer. Doctors have said that her child's condition is critical, which has left the entire family deeply worried. Amy is currently hospitalized with her child, where family members are providing her with comfort and emotional support. Despite all efforts to treat the child, according to doctors, the situation is quite complex. Our deepest sympathies and best wishes to Amy and her family during this difficult time. Amy Slaton sat in the hospital room, the rhythmic beeping of monitors filling the silence. Her son, little Oliver, lay on the bed, his small body overwhelmed by the weight of an illness he didn't deserve. The doctors had called it leukemia, a word that sent a chill down her spine. She had always thought she was strong. She had faced struggles her whole life, fought battles people couldn't even imagine. But this was different. This was her baby. Her sister Tammy sat next to her and held her hand, whispering, "He's a fighter, Amy," she said. "Just like his mama." Amy dabbed at her tear. She murmured, "I wish it were me instead," in a voice that broke. Oliver's weary eyelids fluttered open as he awoke. He muttered, "Mommy," feebly. Amy forced a smile as she leaned forward. "I'm here, baby. Mommy's here." She gripped his tiny fingers tightly as they stretched for hers. It was a struggle every day, but she persisted. If Amy had learned anything in her life, it was that the greatest strength of all was love. Whatever occurred, she would be present, defending her son, battling for optimism. But although Amy and Tammy had always been close, their relationship had been becoming more strained recently. Emotions were running high in their little Kentucky house, and their weight reduction journeys had taken different directions. After a long and tiring day, Amy sat at the dinner table one evening, attempting to feed her son Gage, while Tammy looked through her phone, unwilling to assist. Amy's patience was wearing thin as she sighed. "Tammy, can you at least try to help me?" Tammy rolled her eyes and moaned. "I'm tired, Amy. You always expect me to do everything." Amy pushed her fork down and exclaimed, "Everything? All I ask is for a little help. I have a kid, a house to clean, and I'm still trying to focus on my weight. Meanwhile, you're just sitting there, acting like the world owes you something." Anger twisted Tammy's face. "Oh, so now I'm the lazy one? Maybe if you weren't always acting like a saint, people would actually listen to you." That was it. Something snapped inside Amy. She sprang up and knocked over her chair, her face flushed with rage. "You don't get it, do you? I have to do it all because you refuse to take responsibility for yourself. I'm done, Tammy. Done." There was silence for a time as her words reverberated throughout the home. Sensing the strain, Gage let out a whimper. Amy turned away, tears in her eyes, her hands shaking. For once, Tammy failed to make a comeback. She saw Amy slam the door behind her as she ran out of the kitchen. Perhaps, just possibly, she had pushed her sister too far this time. But staring at the faint light coming in through the curtains, Tammy sat on the edge of her bed. Inside her heart, everything had stopped, even if the outside world was moving. Caleb had left. She was out of breath after the news hit her like a hurricane. Amy sat next to her and held her hand. "I know it hurts, Tammy," she said in a tremulous tone. Tammy dabbed at her tears, but they continued. "Amy, I'm not sure how I'll manage without him. He was my pillar of support. When I didn't even believe in myself, he did." Amy tightened her grip on her hand. "And that belief is still there. He wished for your happiness and well-being. You shouldn't stop right now, in his opinion." Tammy's thoughts was filled with memories of Caleb, his words of encouragement, his laughter, and the way he always made her feel unique in spite of her difficulties. She never imagined that she would meet someone who genuinely understood her, but Caleb did. And he was gone now. Weeks passed. Tammy chatted and ate very little. "You are stronger than you think, Tammy," Caleb spoke to her in her heart one evening as she sat in solitude. "Continue." She inhaled deeply and turned to face Amy. "I want to improve for him." Amy grinned despite her tears. And for you as well. Tammy knew Caleb's love would always be with her, even though it wouldn't be simple. She turned her suffering into strength by carrying him in her heart with each stride she took. But it should have been the ideal Christmas. The entire family gathered around the tree, laughing and exchanging gifts, while Amy had decked the home with sparkling lights and the aroma of cooked turkey. However, she knew in her heart that things would eventually go wrong, especially because Tammy and Amanda were in the same room. With her arms folded and her face already bitter, Tammy sat in her chair, always the talkative one. Amanda had spent the entire evening attempting to avoid her sister's demeanor. However, tension had been rising since Tammy's snide comment about Amanda's ugly sweater upon her arrival. Amy gave Tammy a Christmas present with trepidation. "Come on, Tam. I hope you enjoy it." A lovely handmade blanket was revealed as Tammy tore off the wrapping paper. Rather than express gratitude, she sneered. "Really? A blanket? How am I meant to handle this?" Amanda gave an eye roll. "Maybe for once, enjoy it rather than whine." Tammy gave her a fierce look. "Amanda, no one asked you." That was it. Amanda would not tolerate it. "Oh, here we are once more. You sit here year after year, playing the victim, as if the world is against you. You push everyone away, Tammy, even though we're all trying." Tammy smashed her hand against her chair's armrest. "You have no idea how it feels to be me. You constantly behave as though you're superior to me. Since I accept accountability for my life," Amanda retaliated, "perhaps you would be happier if you quit pointing the finger at other people." There was silence in the room. Amy appeared on the verge of tears. Even the children who had been playing close to the tree halted and gaped as Chris shook his head and said, "Not again." Anger made Tammy's face flush. "You know what? This is not necessary for me. None of you are necessary to me." She knocked over a platter of cookies as she wheeled herself out from the table. Officially, the spirit of Christmas was destroyed. With a sigh, Amy combed through her hair. Why must things always end this way? Chris gave her a pat in return. "Give her time to relax. Perhaps things will be different next year." But they all knew in their hearts that it never was. But as Tammy and Amy Slaton stood at the start line of the local 5K charity walk, the sun was shining brightly. They were supported by their family, which included their brother Chris, sister Amanda, and other close friends. The Slaton sisters were committed to finishing the walk together, and the event was raising money for health awareness. As she adjusted her headband, Amy remarked, "This is a huge step for us." Yeah, said Tammy, rolling her eyes as she laughed. "Just let's get through this without me seeming foolish." People who knew them from their TV program cheered them on as they passed, and they started the marathon at a steady clip, with Chris cracking jokes to keep everyone entertained and Amanda making sure Tammy and Amy were hydrated. "I don't know if I can do this," Tammy remarked, panting, halfway through, but Amy grasped her hand and whispered, "Come on, sis. We've progressed too far to give up now." They continued to press ahead with the support of their family and resolve, and as they got closer to the finish line, a crowd formed to cheer them on. Tammy and Amy exchanged glances, inhaled deeply, and crossed the finish line together. With tears in their eyes, they embraced and said, "We succeeded." Tammy smirked and wiped her forehead, saying, "I'm never doing this again, until next year." Amy applauded. For the Slaton sisters, this was only the beginning of their adventure, which was more than just the walk. It was about proving to themselves that they were stronger than they had previously believed. But Tammy and Amy Slaton were always up for a good time, especially when it meant being creative. And this fall, they discovered a new pastime: making brilliant, colorful artwork on sneakers. After seeing a video about sneaker art, Amy said, "What if we made our own shoes, Tammy? You mean, like, coloring sneakers?" She questioned eagerly, and Tammy, who was sitting on the couch eating a bag of chips, arched an eyebrow. "It sounds disorganized." Amy persisted, though, and the following day she arrived with a box of acrylic paints, fabric markers, and plain white sneakers. "Come on, Tammy, let's make these boring shoes amazing." Though Amy went all out with bright pink swirls, cartoon characters, and even small stars. Tammy reluctantly consented, picked up a blue marker, and drew a little heart on the toe of her sneaker. "Not bad," she said. The sisters became more involved as the days went by. Amy made a rainbow-themed set. Tammy made a Gothic-style pair with skull and dark purple designs, and they even made a YouTube video of their coloring sneakers challenge, in which they timed each other to see who could make the wildest design in 10 minutes. Their fans loved it. Amy had an idea one day. What if we started selling personalized sneakers? To their astonishment, however, people began asking for designs. "Girl, I don't think anyone's gonna buy my crazy skeleton sneakers," Tammy said and chuckled. It was the most inventive and vibrant fall Tammy and Amy had ever experienced. And by the end of the season, they owned a new side business called 1000 Wolf Sneakers, and their designs were popular. But following the ups and downs of their weight loss journey, Amy and Tammy Slaton, who had always been intrigued about the unknown, decided to try something new, seeing a psychic. They had heard of Madame Celeste, a mysterious fortune teller who was renowned for her eerie predictions. Madame Celeste, a woman with silver hair and piercing green eyes, gestured them to seat as they entered the dimly lighted chamber, which smelled of burning sage. She said, "You seek answers about your health," in a cool, wise voice. Amy said, "Yes," as they looked at each other anxiously. "We just want to know if we'll be okay, if we're on the right path." After a pause, Madame Celeste spoke while holding a crystal ball in her hands. "I see strength in addition to obstacles. You'll surprise yourself with your perseverance, Tammy. The path is difficult, but if you persist, you will eventually arrive at a peaceful and balanced location." "Does that mean that I'll succeed?" Tammy gulped hard. Madame Celeste retorted, "Your body needs your love and care, but your spirit is strong. You must believe in yourself. You are the nurturer, the caregiver," she said, turning to face Amy. "However, remember to take care of yourself as well. Your path is about you, not only about other people. Pay attention to your body and heart." "So, will we be healthy?" Amy asked, wiping a tear from her eye. "The future is not set in stone," said Madame Celeste with a smile. "Your future is shaped by the decisions you make now. You will find the health and pleasure you want if you remain resilient and loyal to yourself." Amy and Tammy had a renewed feeling of resolve as they walked out of the psychic's shop, prepared to confront the unknown together. But Amy and Tammy, whose quest for a home care nurse had descended into a full-fledged dispute, sat on their couch with their arms crossed and glared at one another. "We need someone strict, Amy. Someone who won't let us slack off." Tammy rolled her eyes and sighed. "And I told you, Tammy, we need someone kind and patient. We don't need a drill sergeant." Amy shook her head. They had spent the entire morning looking through profiles. Tammy was focused on Nurse Greg, a former military medic with a no-nonsense attitude, while Amy loved Nurse Linda, a sweet woman with a warm smile. Tammy protested, "Linda will let us get away with too much." Amy retorted, "And Greg will make us miserable." Chris, their brother, entered at that moment, eating a bag of chips, and shook his head, asking, "Y'all still arguing?" The two sisters let forth a frustrated grunt. "Why not interview both? See who actually works for both of you," Chris shrugged. It wasn't a horrible idea. Amy and Tammy looked at each other. They visited with Linda and Greg the following day. Linda was gentle but firm, explaining how she struck a balance between caring and responsibility, while Greg, in spite of his tough exterior, had a sensitive side and placed more emphasis on motivation than punishment. Amy and Tammy finally decided that it would be best to hire both for different shifts, with Greg providing tough love and Linda providing emotional support. After considerable deliberation and yet another little fight, Amy grinned and said, "See, Tammy? Compromise isn't so bad," as they shook hands with their new nurses. "All right. But if Greg makes me do push-ups, I'm blaming you," said Tammy, smiling despite rolling her eyes. The Slaton sisters had finally achieved their ideal equilibrium. But fans were traveling from all over to see them, snap photos, and hear their stories at the special meet and greet that Amy and Chris had spent weeks organizing. But there was one major issue: Tammy. Tammy had consented, but it was turning out to be more difficult than they had anticipated to get her there. Tammy said as she browsed through her phone in her chair, "I'm not feeling it today. It's too hot outside." "We promised the fans. They want to see all of us," Amy groaned. Chris, who always finds a solution, clasped his hands together and said, "All right, how about this? We're on our way to get you your favorite milkshake. Extra large." "From my favorite place?" asked Tammy, raising an eyebrow. Chris crossed his arms and added, "Yep, but only if you come." After giving it some thought, she moaned, "All right, but if I get tired, we're going to leave." The first battle was won, and Chris and Amy looked at each other with relief. The next hurdle was getting Tammy into the van, which she did slowly, stopping at the steps and saying, "Ah, I hate this part." "You got this, sis. Just take it slow," Amy urged her. They made the promised stop for the milkshake, and after a little grousing and some work, Tammy was in, and eventually they were headed off. A sizable throng had already gathered at the location, and they cheered as they saw Tammy emerge. "We love you, Tammy," someone yelled. "Okay, maybe this ain't so bad," said Tammy, waving as a tiny smile appeared on her face. Amy and Chris smiled. Tammy had succeeded, and that was worth every bit of the effort. But after years of waiting, the day had finally come for Chris, who had battled his weight for the majority of his life, to have the life-altering surgery he had long dreamed about. His sister Tammy, who had been there for him through all of their highs and lows, watched from the sidelines with a range of emotions bubbling inside of her. But this time it felt different. "It seems like you're actually doing it." With a small tremble in her voice, Tammy asked. With a weary but resolute look, Chris said, "Yeah, Tammy, I'm doing it. It's the only way I can take charge of my life, even though I know it won't be simple." Tammy, who had always been Chris's strongest supporter, nodded slowly, her own health and weight issues weighing heavily on her heart. She had long dreamed of a surgery like this, but had always felt that the possibility was out of reach, and today it was difficult not to feel a twinge of jealousy. After a successful surgery, Chris awoke with the hope and comfort he had been waiting for. But as his recuperation progressed, he noticed that Tammy was struggling to accept her own reality. She would see him in the hospital every day, but her eyes were sad. One afternoon, while they were sitting in the hospital room with the sun sinking outside, Chris said to her, "You're stronger than you think. I know you do." With a tear in her eye, Tammy said, "But what if I don't, Chris? What if this is how I'm stuck for all time?" "You won't be," Chris said, taking her hand and giving her a firm squeeze. "Remember, we've always been in this together. Since you're my sister, I won't be leaving. Each of us is entitled to a better life." It wasn't easy, and there were setbacks, but every day was an opportunity to improve. Tammy started her own path with Chris's newfound strength and resolve, taking baby steps, walking a little farther each day, concentrating on her health, and asking for help when she needed it. Months passed, and Chris and Tammy started to change, not just physically, but emotionally as well. They learned to support one another, talk about their worries, and celebrate their successes, and they realized that real transformation was about healing, self-love, and never giving up on one another, not just about losing weight. They knew they would face whatever came next, together, as they stood side by side, facing the future, realizing that their adventure had only just begun.